Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Let's see. It is October, and October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we have a special guest today who is going to share her story. But before we get started, I want to give some statistics about breast cancer. According to cancer.org, breast cancer is the most common cancer in American women, except for skin cancer. It says the average risk of a woman in the United States developing breast cancer sometime in her life is about 13%. The American Cancer Society's estimates for breast cancer in the US for 2021 are about 281,550 new cases of invasive breast cancer will be diagnosed in women. About 49,290 new cases of ductal carcinoma in situ will be diagnosed, and about 43,600 women will die from breast cancer. Breast cancer is the second leading cause of cancer death in women. Only lung cancer kills more women each year. But since 2007, breast cancer death rates have been steady in women younger than 50, but have continued to decrease in older women. From 2013 to 2018, the death rate went down by 1% per year. It says these decreases are believed to be the result of finding breast cancer earlier through screening and increased awareness, as well as better treatments. There have been improvements. And Melanie lost her mom to breast cancer when Melanie was 10. So Melanie is with us today to talk about the very personal impact of breast cancer on her life. And Melanie, I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about your mom before we start talking about her illness, so that maybe we can get to know her a little bit as a person separate from her diagnosis first.
Absolutely. My childhood was a little different. My dad is a musician, and my mom was a beautician. So kind of very, liberal as well. But we're also talking 80s and early 90s time frame. My mom, she was, I don't want to get choked up, but everybody loved her. She had like this grace to her. And I've been lucky enough to see some old home videos to kind of watch her. Through the eyes of a child is so different from when you're an adult and then you're watching this person, but just seeing how grateful she was to everyone, like watching her get a gift and just seeing her be so grateful, and you can just see it down to her being, it wasn't just skin deep with her, and just the effect that she had on people, but she didn't realize it. When she first got sick, I mean, everyone came out of the woodwork to help feed us and watch us. And my own elementary school teacher, like everything. And just when she passed away and people found out, I lived a different state at the time, but people that I had gone to school since kindergarten who knew her reached out to me, and I hadn't seen in a few years. I mean, everyone loved her. And it wasn't, the most popular person. She was just so kind-hearted and just warm. She was just a warm person. That's the best way I can describe it.
That's a lovely way to talk about your mom's legacy. So I appreciate you telling us that about your mom. How did your mom handle telling you all, like, how did y'all find out that she was sick?
She also, a little bit to know, is back then, so we're talking 1990, before the Affordable Care Act, my parents didn't have health insurance. So, there's a lot of that going on. So she felt a lump, but didn't say anything because we didn't have health insurance. And so she just continued not to say anything. When she finally did, they misdiagnosed her. And then it continued to get worse and painful. And then they correctly diagnosed her. That's when I was about 10 years old. My parents didn't want to worry, and my sister's about 7 years older than me. So she has obviously a different perception as well. And she knew more than I did my age. So they kind of held back. They told me that there was something wrong with her and she needed to have surgeries. And she had 2 mastectomies. They weren't done at the same time. They were done at separate times. So that's really all they kind of said. They really kept it super light with me. They said, oh, she's going to have to go to the doctor a little bit more. They told me that her hair might fall out because she did chemo, but I was never allowed to go to those treatments with her or anything like that. She did that. From my perspective, all I really saw was that she would just be kind of tired, and she lost her hair and she got a wig. She was actually kind of excited about it because she was a hair person. So
yeah,
fine with that. That was, it was kept really kind of on the down low, the best way to say it for me and my sister. They didn't want us to worry, but being as kids, you notice things.
Yeah, of course.
We already didn't have a lot of money, having a musician father who worked in retail, during the day and then did music at night. And my mom at this point only did hair part-time, and then she worked part-time at my elementary school. So I had the privilege of seeing her every day. That doesn't bring in a lot of money. And then having these kinds of surgeries and these kind of medical bills, I just paid attention to my parents' conversations with their friends, and I understood that we didn't have a lot. I never felt like we didn't have a lot. My dad still got food on the table, but I didn't get to have certain things that other kids have. I look at my own kids and I never got to have any of this. Fruit roll-ups never happened in my house. I knew something was wrong, but I never quite knew exactly what it was. They never, told me anything, how serious it was. Luckily, the chemotherapy did work, and she went into remission for a few years. But it was in 1994, 95 is when it came back. It metastasized. And that run is kind of all over because our family history there is we were in Michigan, and then we weren't in Michigan. We moved to California. It was kind of chaotic. The reason why we moved to California was for health insurance, because my dad, his cousin had been trying to get him to take a job, like a real job, 9-to-5 kind of job out in California, because he knew how smart my dad was. And he knew my dad, as much as he wanted to be a rock star, it was never going to happen. It hadn't happened yet. It wasn't going to happen. But he was so intelligent that they wanted him to come out there. And they finally convinced him to do it. And a big part of it was for health insurance, because she got sick again. And we were still paying the bills from the first round of everything. So it was one of those things where, my dad can only max out so many credit cards. Right. He sold a lot of his instruments. If I ever have enough money, I'm going to buy the guitar that he sold. That right now is about $15,000.
Oh my goodness.
But if I could, I would buy that back for him. So it's a little kind of chaotic.
So you didn't really know what was going on, but of course kids pick up on everything in the home. What was your perception? And when she got sick again, like, how did you deal with it?
See, I think when it first happened, I didn't know she was sick.
Right.
And part of it at that time is my dad went out to California, but my mom and I stayed in Michigan. So my mom and I stayed in Michigan, and my dad went out to California, and he would send us money. And then that's how we were able to have health insurance. So she was going to the doctor, but not really. My sister was in college at this point. She went to Hope College, so she was a couple hours away, but she was in Michigan. So I was alone with my mom. And this now puts me in junior high, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And I remember it was the Thanksgiving after my dad had left, and he was coming home for that Thanksgiving to be with us for a bit. And we were in the grocery store cashier line, and she collapsed.
Oh no.
And I'm 13. I'm 13
gosh.
at this time. My initial reactions as things are going on is I can drive home. I can figure it out. I know how to start the car.
Wow.
I know how to get home. Luckily, the grocery store had like undercover security guards, and they came out of the woodwork. She revived, so no one called an ambulance or anything, packed up, and she drove us home.
You must have been kind of terrified.
Yeah, it was, because that was probably the first real serious thing that I had to deal with on my own, with really, we're talking no cell phones, no pagers, no any of those
Yeah,
things.
no, none of that
There's
existed.
nothing.
Right.
From that point, did you become her caregiver?
Kind of. Yeah, I would say that, not consciously. It just sort of happened.
I could see that.
Because as time progressed,
Yeah.
she was getting sicker, but I didn't know what to do. And I started doing more things where if we went to the grocery store, she would send me in by myself with some money if we needed milk, which was that was something you could get away with back then. Now people would be like, what are you doing? At that age, that's when I started to learn to cook for myself, because she didn't really want to eat much for herself. And so I started trying to feed myself during that time. She would wake me up for school, but I pretty much handled myself after that.
At this point, did your dad give you more information about what was going on, or
No, because he didn't really understand what was going on either, and I didn't know how to articulate it to him.
I see.
I was kind of afraid to stress him out, because he was already, like, him being on the other side of the country and doing, living as minimally as he possibly could. I didn't want to worry him. I wanted him to feel like everything was okay.
Yeah, you had a lot on your shoulders.
Yeah. Then he came home. At that point, he had decided it was too tough to be in California, so he wanted to stay. So he actually stayed unemployed through Christmas. That was the Christmas that it was the least I ever got physically, toys, things like that. However, it was the first Christmas where I really felt the meaning of Christmas. When we talk about that every year, when Christmas rolls around, really feeling that how important family is. Because my dad was there, my mom was there, my sister was there, and I did not care that I got a pair of gloves and that was it. Like, I did not care. I was just so happy to be together.
What is the meaning of Christmas?
To me, it's remembering how important family is, that you don't know when someone's going to not be there anymore. For family grudges to be let go of, all of these things, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And I realized that it didn't help that Christmas is my mom's favorite holiday. I mean, that's the one that she lived for, because she got to see family, and she just loved being around people, and not, like I said, not being the center of attention, just like sitting there and just being around everybody. Like she just, and so, that was already instilled in me, but to me, it's not about the presents and how many you get. It's not, it's I got to be there with my parents, and we enjoyed ourselves, and the money we did have, we splurged on food my mom cooked, and I got to do cookies with her. Like, she kind of perked up during that time because he was home and people were around.
Yeah.
But because he hadn't worked and he couldn't find a job in Michigan, because finding jobs in Michigan at that time was really bad. We're talking, General Motors was starting to leave the state. I mean, it was pretty rough. So he went back to California. That was the beginning of January. And then the next scariest moment of my life was hearing my mom call my name from downstairs. She slept on the first floor in the living room, and I was on the second floor, and I heard her yelling for me, crying, help, Mel, help. So I came down the stairs, and she was like, her body was frozen. Not really a seizure, because she could communicate, but she couldn't move her body. So thankfully, my uncle was a medical doctor and lived close. That was the first thing I could think of. First person I could think, because it's also the middle of the night, and it's a school night too. So called him, and he told me exactly what to do. He's like, I want you to call this number to get an ambulance. He's like, and I'll be right there.
Wow.
And so, and it was winter. I remember opening the front door and actually shoveling the front porch off so they could come in. He came in, and told me just to go sit in the kitchen for a little bit while the medics came in. And then they took her away. And then he took me home with him. Because again, my dad's out in California. My grandparents had just gotten back from being in Europe. So I didn't even know what phone to call them on, like at all at this point. So I went home with him. It was the next day. They called my grandparents. They came down and got me. But my mom was in the hospital for a month at that point.
Wow.
She was diagnosed with the cancer being in her blood, bones, and brain.
Oh my gosh.
Which doesn't have a very great
Prognosis.
Mm.
So yeah, I kind of lived in this world where I went to school and my grandparents picked me up. We go to the hospital, hang out with my mom, go home, do it again, like every single day. I did coordinate to get my sister over. I had asked my neighbor to drive me to Holland to pick up my sister because my sister didn't have a car. We did that. And then I remember I went, Dad, you need to come home at least once.
Wow.
Like Mom needs to see you. Like she needs it. So he came home for a little bit. That's when she started to kind of come around. I think he was always kind of her rock, and just me going, okay, here's my sister. See her, just her seeing who she needed to see kind of pulled her around mentally, even though she was still sick. And then she came home and then she started doing a lot better in general. She and I went to go visit my dad because I was 100% against moving to California. I didn't want to do it. I wanted nothing to do with it. So he said, well, let's come out and have you visit. He already got an apartment townhouse for us and stuff like that. I went out there, took me to Disneyland and promised me an annual pass to Disneyland for the rest of the years.
Annual pass.
Annual pass. Yep. Annual pass, because we lived about 20 minutes away from Disneyland. I still wasn't too keen on moving, but I was like, okay, I'll do it for the annual pass. And then that June after, let's see, my mom was in her best friend's wedding and we moved to California the next day.
Wow.
Your mom and everybody moved to California.
Yeah. My sister, because my sister it was summer break for her. It was obviously summer break for me.
Right.
And we packed up and moved out to California with probably way too much stuff. My grandparents helped us. They put CB radios and they drove the moving van, and my grandfather loved CB radios. So he put one in that and then one in our car so we could always talk to each other. So we moved out and my mom was doing actually pretty good for a while. She was doing her treatments, everything. My dad had the only thing he called is a nervous breakdown. He had the flu.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was doing really well at this point. Like she was strong, everything's going really well. And I feel like because he could relax and he got him.
Yep.
So he didn't work for about 3 weeks, but his job paid him. They totally understood because he was working for family. So it was not like, FMLA didn't exist back then. If it did, I don't think anybody used it. I remember he grew a beard, first I'd ever seen. But when he started feeling better, he pulled himself back out. So we had a good run there for a little while that was my freshman year of high school. Then we get to sophomore year of high school and my mom starts to decrease.
Mm.
It was probably that summer before my sophomore year, because that summer she had a downturn, and what my parents didn't tell me was that they had given her 6 months to live.
Oh,
yeah,
my
they didn't tell us. Neither me nor my sister. My sister, they made her go back to school. So she actually continued to go to Hope College in Michigan while we were in California.
Okay.
While she was in college, if she would call and ask for updates, my dad and my mom wouldn't update her. But then I'd get on the phone. And this we had cordless phones at this point. So I would hide somewhere in the house and kind of give her an update because they didn't want her to ruin her education.
Yeah.
My dad's always,
that makes sense.
Always been like, education is so important. It's so important. We weren't able to afford school, but my sister and I were smart enough to go to school, to have the scholarships, all of those things. So that was really important. And my sister pushed through it. She did. She worked really hard. She got 2 degrees in 4 years. She pushed through it. Mhm.
Let me ask you this kind of difficult question, your opinion on this. My dad always thanks me when I go to the doctor and I give him an update about what's going on. He's like, thank you for telling me because I feel like I'm more prepared. And then he'll tell me how his mom and dad didn't ever tell them that was something was going on until it was over. How did you respond to not having a whole lot of information? And do you think it was better for you and your sister, or do you think it was, or would you have liked to know more what was going on?
I was a little bit more immersed into it. So particularly by the time we got to California and me being around my mom so much as she was sick, it's like,
You knew.
the only thing they didn't tell me was that prognosis of 6 months. Otherwise, I saw all of it. My sister
Wow.
didn't see any of it. And I know she holds a little bit of a grudge. Like, she understands. She does. She understands. But she's always wanted them to know how much it did hurt that
Right.
she didn't know.
Right.
So it's kind of this
Yeah.
like double-edged sword thing.
Because they were
Like,
trying to protect her.
yeah, they didn't want her to, become depressed and then get kicked out of school or fail out of college, all that stuff. Where
Right.
then in the future she might be upset because of that. So it was one of those things, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah,
Right.
of course. I just wondered your opinion. Of course, your
Yeah.
parents do exactly what they believe to be the right and best thing at the
Yeah.
time. Do the best they can.
Yes, it
Tough-
is.
It's a
what you
tough
do best.
situation with no real answer. That's what I wondered. What
Yeah, there's no real answer. I mean, my dad was so good with me and my school did not know. I did not say a word.
Wow.
And your dad didn't say anything either?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, why didn't you say anything?
So you know me now. No, I've gotten back to kind of the person I used to be before my mom got sick. I was real bubbly, super energetic. I was like the center of attention. And then she got sick and then I immediately shut down.
Yeah.
And I think this is a control. Yeah. Because I even say it during high school when she was sick, is that it wasn't that I wasn't social. I just didn't create any relationships that were very deep or very close. They were really, I kind of kept everybody in a very kind of superficial sort of way. I would crack jokes. I would hang out occasionally, but it wasn't like I had a best friend. I never let anybody quite, and some of my friends knew things were happening, but I never truly talked about it.
Mhm.
It wasn't until I'd say about 3 weeks before my mom died that I finally broke down to my homeroom teacher and told her what was going on.
Oh my.
You carried so much on your shoulders. So much.
Mm-hmm.
Melanie, do you feel like you grew up really fast?
Yes.
with your mom getting sick?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because later in life during college, I started working with a youth ministry, and I worked with kids who were obviously the age. I worked with junior high and high school, and I looked at these kids. And I have the same feeling with my own. I want them to be kids. I want them to make mistakes and not feel that they have to worry about feeding themselves or their parent. Like, they shouldn't have to do those kinds of things.
Right.
I want them to enjoy life and not have to create control of school to control. I'm smart enough. I can get the A's. I can do this because that's what I did.
Yeah.
When I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what got me through. Was I knew I could. That was a thing. I can't control anything else, but I can do that.
Yeah, you were coping. That was the one thing that you could control. That makes sense.
Yeah.
What did your homeroom teacher do or say when you let her know?
It was like homeroom class, and it was time to like go to the next class, and I continued to sit there, and I said, I need to tell you something. And I started crying. I said, I need to tell you what's going on at home. And I kind of just unloaded on her. I'm like, my mom, I know my mom's dying. My dad's working, my sister's on the other side of the country. I said, I said, it's going to get harder for me. I need somebody to understand that.
Wow.
And that was basically all I said. And then she went in and informed all my teachers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them were kind of half and half in how they treated me after that. Some of them it was like status quo. And they just, which is what I wanted. I didn't want a pity party. I didn't want to be treated differently. I just wanted them to be aware that if I wasn't in class, because at this point too, my dad would drop me off at school, and I'd sit in the car, and there'd be days where I go, I can't do it. I can't do it today. I can't be in school. It was a panic attack without the breathing stuff. It was just in my head. I knew I couldn't be there. I could be home. And at this point too, my mom was in and out of the hospital constantly. Sometimes she was home, sometimes she wasn't. It was back and forth all the time. So it was probably, it was one of those times where she was in, and it was, again, my dad dropped me off from school, then he picked me up, and then we go to the hospital and spend the rest of the day there. I do my homework at the hospital and then come home, and then it'd just be over. And, so I remember he just took me home and dropped me off. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't force me into anything. But if you can't do it, you can't do it.
Wow.
So those were becoming more frequent, just because it was just, I knew it was all in my head. It was, they had anxiety. It was just my head. Not that school was causing it, but I just needed the mental break.
Yeah.
And just sit home and watch TV. I guess. I would go home and do homework and things like that, but I just needed the mental break.
I think at that point you probably deserved the mental break.
Absolutely.
My dad used to tell me all the time, child is father to man. And I don't know who originally said it. I should probably look it up. It wasn't him, because of everything I was doing. When my mom was home, he'd still go to work, but I'd walk home from school and I would take care of her until he got home. And there was every day I would have this anxiety as I would walk up to the door of where she would be in the house. My mom was a smoker. My parents were, but we told her she couldn't do it. But she would find my dad's cigarette butts and try to light them on the stove. But the one time I walked in the door and I found her on the floor. I don't know how long she'd been there. She was conscious, but she was trying to get to something. At this time, she couldn't really walk on her own. She needed assistance, to go to the bathroom. So, my dad and I were gone. We had everything set up, food set for her. We even had a simple bathroom kind of thing so that she wouldn't have to walk down the hall. She had gotten up for some reason and she had fallen, and she had a gigantic bruise on her hip. So I got her up, put her back in her bed, and she was crying because she felt bad that I had to take care of her. But the one thing that always made me smile, or makes me smile, is she was obsessed with orange sherbet. Or sherbet.
Sherbet.
Yep, sherbet. And as soon as I had her back in the bed, she went, "Can I have my orange sherbet now?" And I'd make her a bowl, and I just remember shaking. Like, "Yeah, Mom. Yeah, I'll get it for you. I'll get it for you." And then crying, and then telling her like she was a child why she shouldn't be getting up. Just kind of crying and telling her, "Mom, I love you, but you have to, you gotta stay where Dad tells you to stay until I get home, and then I can help you with whatever you want. Whatever you need, I can help you when I get home."
During this process, what do you think your hardest emotion to deal with was? What hit you like, ugh?
I would say it was when I found out she died. And my grandmother used to say this about me, is that she rarely saw me cry. Rarely. Even the hard times in the hospital where my mom would have these episodes where she couldn't see and she'd scream and holler, I just go out in the hallway and sit on the floor. I was really good at finding all the different little nooks and crannies of the hospital. I can tell you that. If you wanted to know how to get down into something, I could tell you. So I did. I did. My grandmother said, "You're the strong one. You're the strong one." And the morning that the hospice called, my sister answered. I got out of the shower, came down the stairs, and my grandparents were there at this point. My dad had actually gone to work, and my sister hung up the phone and she looked at me and she goes, "Mom's gone." And it was like everything just released in me, and I just broke down. Like everything I had held back in front of everybody just came out right then and there. I literally collapsed on the floor and just cried and cried. But then 2 days later, I sucked it all back in, went back to school.
Oh my gosh.
2 days?
Melanie, oh my God.
I didn't have to, but I did. It was the last week and a half of my sophomore year.
Well, it was something that you could control again.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It was something that was yours.
And then this is not funny. I know, and it wasn't funny at the time, but my PE class that week. So I went back on, my mom died on a Monday. I stayed out on Tuesday, but I went back on Wednesday. And then Thursday I had PE and I got accidentally punched in the face in volleyball and I had blood everywhere. So I had to go to the school nurse. I had blood everywhere. And when I got in, the nurse is like, and I'm also crying because I'm now like, again, I've got all these emotions going on. And I remember sitting there and she's like, honey, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And I went, no, my mom died on Monday. And she just went, oh my God. Like, oh my God. And I was like, yeah, sorry. And I'm like apologizing. I'm like, my mom died on Monday. And then they had called my family and they said, oh, your grandmother's on your way. Oh, your grandmother's coming. And I went, oh my gosh, I can't be in this room when she gets here. They're like, what do you mean? She can't see me. I said, she's a feisty woman. She's going to come in here and she's going to be like, where's my granddaughter? Where's my granddaughter? She's not going to be able to see me where I'm at. Can you put me where she can see me in a chair? And they're like, you're fine. And the next thing I know, I could hear her. And she's 5 foot tall, never weighed more than 100 pounds. She's got my sister trailing behind her. And she's like, where's my granddaughter? Where's my granddaughter? I come running out. This time my nose has stopped bleeding. Where is she? I'm like, I'm right here. I'm right here. I'm okay. So, I mean, I laugh about it now, probably where I get my fights. Then I continued to go to high school finals, the semester finals. It was interesting what my teachers did because I showed up. Like Spanish class, I was supposed to do an oral and my teacher never called my name, like the bell rang. Just sit there and I walked up to him and I was prepared. He didn't call on me. He goes, you got an A.
Wow.
And then my biology teacher, who was notorious for being like the hardest, sat down and I did the final. And when you could come back like the next week, he had all the scores posted on the door. You didn't have to wait till your report card. And he gave me 100% for it. So again, he's like, you got an A. So it was interesting. Yeah, some teachers, they were like just quiet about it, but went, you're fine. And then others were like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. We don't need to talk about it. It's okay. I'll be all right.
To take this in a whole kind of another direction now, do you think your mother got the health care she deserved?
No. I think because, our health system, my dad is a huge supporter of universal health care for obvious good reasons. And
Raquel has something to say about that. Raquel, what did you say about it last time?
Oh, people who don't support universal health care can fuck off and kiss my ass.
That is what she said.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know my parents actually thought, with my parents married, my mom, we couldn't get Medicaid. So they actually contemplating getting a divorce so that she would be a single mom with two kids, barely making anything, so that she could be on it. But my dad didn't want to break up the family.
Yeah.
He's like, no. I mean, it was already hard enough when we went and did, when he was out in California, that was so hard on us.
Yeah.
Right.
That he was, none of those things. He was way too proud to, ask for assistance. But again, thank God that our uncle was a medical doctor, because he actually would treat me and my sister as kids for free. My experience of going to the doctor, I realized, wasn't normal for everybody else. Come up through the back door, and his nurses would work for him longer than I had been alive, knew who we were, and just would put us in an exam room. Like, I never been in his waiting room. I don't even know what it looks like.
That's some shady under the cover stuff, Melanie. But good.
It was a sweet man. He actually would go down to Haiti every year, multiple times a year if he could, and do vasectomies for men.
Oh wow.
For free. He would go down there and do a lot of medical stuff. He was a very, very giving, very charitable person. Looking back on it, I don't know what my parents would have done without him. You know, I mean, I remember one Christmas he gave us all flu shots. He had them in his refrigerator.
That was your Christmas present? A flu shot?
We were just at his house for a family thing, and he's like, I got flu shots in my refrigerator if anybody wants one.
Let's do it.
And my dad, my parents lined up. I mean, yeah, interesting family, I guess I have.
That's awesome.
How did losing your mom so early affect your life as a woman?
Made me real stubborn, a lot stronger. I've always said that was the worst part of my life, and I made it through. I can handle anything. Like, if I can handle that at 13, of watching my mom struggle in pain and call an ambulance and figure everything out, everything else is a piece of cake. I'm a very humble person, but when it comes to my intelligence, that's where I'm not humble anymore.
Good.
My dad has always told me and my sister, never let anyone insult your intelligence. Like, to this day.
Amen.
Oh yeah, my dad's definitely, you know, just because we were girls, he didn't care what he had. He was just happy, you know. So I learned how to do all the stuff that, you know, boys are supposed to learn from their dads. You know, a friend of mine, we were talking about it, and I said, I've spent many a night holding a flashlight for my dad while he changed the motor, the oil in his cars. You know, or fixing things and all of that, the expectation of you need to know how to do these things in life.
I can just hear through this entire conversation the tremendous love you have for your father.
Oh yeah.
I can just hear it.
I mean, I saw what he went through, because he is a very sensitive person, and he just, I mean, he would do anything for me and my sister. I mean, to this day, he says, you know, if you need a home, you have one. It doesn't matter. Wow. None of it matters. If I need him for anything, I know I can call him. And it's always been that. But sometimes I get emotional with him because I know how much he cared, and I know I'm not disappointing him. I'm sort of like disappointed that sometimes I have my sister call and tell him, because I know I can't physically say it, I'll be crying too hard. Because he got mad at me once. I went back to California to do an internship, and the internship wasn't working out. And I had my heart set on this internship too. It was one of those things where, okay, I've got to call my dad. I have no money and I need to get back to Michigan. And I told my sister first, and then my dad calls me like 15 minutes later. He's like, why couldn't you call and tell me? And I just broke down in tears. And I'm like, Dad, I knew I couldn't get the words out without crying hysterically, which then would cause him to worry more, because I couldn't get it out. And that's when he said, he's like, there's always a home for you. No matter what, there's always a home. And within a week, I was back in Michigan.
Melanie, your experience with your mom being sick and having to care for her, and just how your family pulled together and everything, how has that affected the way that you approach your own health?
Question. That's a great question.
It is a really great question. You would say when I was younger, it's like I didn't care. But as I've gotten older and closer to the age my mom was diagnosed, it's a different mindset. I would say during my 20s, and I was diagnosed with HPV, and I had precancerous cells when I was about 25.
We're a club.
I know, it is a club. My sister had the same thing. It's actually quite a normal thing, believe it or not. And my sister felt the same way too when she reached 40. Is it's like now we have like this little countdown. My mom was diagnosed at 42, but it obviously came before that.
Right.
So it's this thing of, okay, you know, and I've been doing mammograms since I was 30. Because of the history. I was able to do it sooner.
So it was recommended for you at an earlier age because of your family history. Yeah. I think that's important for women to understand.
Yeah. So yeah, it kind of, it's not like a cloud over you, but you're just more conscious of it. And then actually just recently in the last month, I had a mammogram and I have cysts in my left breast, which they're benign currently. But I have to go back in 6 months to do another mammogram and a possible ultrasound to see, you know, if there's any changes. Even from now till then, you know, if I notice any changes myself, and my doctor brought me in and actually showed me and had me feel where they're at so I can understand the difference.
Great. Oh, wow. Great. That's awesome.
Yeah. She's like, and she's like, you know, putting my hand where I needed to be. She's like, if you notice anything, any pain, any change in, you know, how hard it is, or how large it is. She goes, you're coming in and we'll do an ultrasound before. Because of my history, you know, my sister hasn't had any of this. So, and it may not turn into anything, but then it could. So it's one of those things where it's the first time I've probably voiced it. My worst fear is that what will happen to me will happen to my boys.
Oh my.
And I just, in my head, I'm like, no, like I refuse for that to happen. My boys to have the childhood that I didn't get to have.
If something did happen to you, if you did get sick, would you make the same choice that your parents did of not telling what was going on?
No, I would tell them, like, I mean, COVID's been interesting in explaining that, because I've been pretty honest. My grandfather died from COVID, and just explaining to him. So it's not, oh, they're just, you know, I'm not making it pretty, but I'm not making it scary and ugly either. It's
well,
more
you're
just,
scaling it to their level of understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think if I did get sick, because I know my oldest would know that there was a change and he would ask questions. And so I would make it so how he could understand it. Luckily, it's been, you know, 23 years, 24 years, actually over 25 years since my mom was diagnosed, that science has grown leaps and bounds. Today, I think if she was alive today and was diagnosed today, that she would still be alive.
Right.
As opposed to back then. You know, you just look at it, and that was so great when, I mean, even our own COVID vaccines, you know, it's just, to me, it's, why wouldn't you save a life?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you?
Why would I just,
Melanie, telling your story, your mom's story, why is it a feminist issue? Why is it important to tell on a feminist podcast?
health insurance, you know, looking at even just at COVID, at the number of women who have had to drop out of the workforce to take care of their children.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Because then they lose their health insurance.
Yeah.
What if they do get sick? What if, I mean, it's, to me, it's a bunch of different avenues.
They
It's a lot
lost
of different
everything.
avenues.
They lost their job. They lost their health insurance. They're at home trying to balance the kids. They lost their seniority. So they try to go back into the workforce. And where are they now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're asked to work, you know, oh, can I work remotely? Then they're told, oh, well, you're just babysitting your kids. Stuff like that. I mean, that's what I'm seeing now. And back then we didn't have health insurance, and it was hard to find jobs, and a job didn't guarantee health insurance. And
it doesn't feel like there's been that much progress in those areas, which is ridiculous.
Why does our health insurance have to be tied to our work?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Why?
It makes no sense.
Yeah. Because then you're taking a huge part of the population out.
Absolutely.
Huge part. And then if you see in many businesses, they don't want to provide the health insurance, so they don't bring on people full time. So they don't have to pay that.
Yeah, that does happen a lot of,
you know,
and then people are working 2 and 3 jobs on a part-time basis, trying to make enough money, but they still don't have health insurance.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, you know, God forbid, smaller companies that can't afford insurance plans for their employees. I mean, it isn't always just a case of,
There is that.
It shouldn't be tied to our job.
We've covered this a little bit, but what are your thoughts on the state of healthcare, where it was, where it is now, and what do we need for women?
Where it was non-existent. I mean, my dad paid off the last bill from that the same month she died, 6 years later. I remember when it was the last bill, showed it to me. This is the last one.
Healthcare costs wipes families out.
Oh,
It
yeah.
wipes them out.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, I know it can go a lot farther. I mean, to me, insurance companies are dictating also what doctors can and cannot do.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
My gynecologist won't exactly say that, but I know that's how she talks to me about things. Like she always tells me to double check how I'm getting billed.
Yeah.
Always. Every time I see her, double check, make sure they're billing you correctly. Yeah. I mean, just look at the number of people who with COVID, they can't afford their hospital stays because they've been in there for a month.
Mm-hmm.
It wipes the family out. It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
It isn't even a case of, oh, this family doesn't make very much money. I mean, even families who make a pretty decent living, one medical stay, if they don't have health insurance, will wipe them out because the costs are astronomical.
And then
Yes.
medical bills. So it's on your credit report. So you can't get a credit card, you can't get a mortgage, you have trouble getting a car. It's just everything is so bound up.
my grandparents used to go to England for
Mhm.
6 months, about 17 years in a row. And she had gotten sick over there, and she was prone to getting sick. So she was in for a couple, but the government there paid for it, and she wasn't a citizen.
Wow.
They sent my grandfather a bill, but it was like $200.
Wow. I didn't realize that they would extend that even to somebody who's not a citizen.
Neither
They
did I.
did. They did.
Mm.
And I've been to, because usually the argument is, oh, there's long lines and all this stuff. I've been to New Zealand, right? They're similar healthcare as England, United Kingdom.
So,
there's
so you
no
have to wait in line. This is their argument.
That's some of the,
You
you'll
have
have
to
to
wait
wait
in
in line forever, and you'll never see a doctor because it's,
The same
they
people
don't
go
have
to Disney and wait in line.
yeah. Well, I
Well,
mean, because they
And how
say,
many of us have had how many of us have had the experience of having an appointment, going to the doctor, getting there early, and then we don't get seen until 30, 40 minutes after our scheduled appointment?
Try 3 hours sometimes.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
When you want to go get your driver's license renewed, you wait in line.
all of it's a farce, though. It's,
Right.
in those countries, they'll even tell you it is.
Waiting in line is
They're
not
gonna be like,
valid.
no, when you're sick, you go to the doctor. Like, there's no second guessing. It's just then you go,
Right.
and everything's okay. You don't have to pay a copay. You don't have to do any of that. Yes, their taxes are higher,
But the taxes are being used for healthcare.
yeah, I mean, if you think about it, what if the same amount of money that you're putting out for insurance premiums
We're paying
at your
taxes
employer was
instead.
taxes,
Yeah.
but you got better health care?
Mm.
I mean, in fact, it actually could be less, depending on, if you have a whole family or something
Right.
on your policy, but it is. I mean, if it was taken out, you wouldn't have to worry about any of this. An insurance telling you can't get a prescription filled yet. I
Right.
have that for my son. He's on epileptic medicine, and I have to go a certain time frame before I can ask for the refill.
Yep. That's the way it
Or
goes.
they won't let me. To me, that's bizarre. Or, even you think of birth control. My birth control.
Don't even get me started on that
you
one.
know.
Is there anything that you wanted to tell us about your story, your mom, that we didn't ask you about?
I tell my dad, I'm like, you came up pretty golden when mom died with me. He's like, how do you mean? I'm like, I could have gone off the deep end.
Yeah.
Because I worked with a lot of kids when I worked for the church. I worked for kids who were cutters and,
Yeah.
suicidal thoughts and just all of that. And I said, I could have gone off the deep end. I didn't.
Yeah.
I kept it together and chose to, even then, I talk about it because I held it in all that time. Now I talk about it. And I used to say, I talk about it because I can remember her. It's pulling up the memories that I don't want to lose, the bad ones and the good ones. So I'm always fine about talking about it. It does not scare me to rehash the scary moments.
Wow.
And I think that's another reason why I started working at the church. And I did that for about 3.5 years. Is I wanted all of those kids just know that someone was going to listen to them, not judge them. One of my students, he had piercings and he had gotten tattoos and he always wore black and he had those huge pants. Some boys wore like gigantic legged pants. It almost looked like a gigantic skirt, His parents, he would sit outside, so I would sit outside with him.
Mhm.
And I didn't look like him. I was dressed up for church. And even at youth meetings, I was then I had the usual California girl, at that time. It's much different now. look was, a graphic t-shirt, shorts, a hoodie, some sandals, flip-flops. So I look like the clean cut kid next to the scary kid. And sometimes parents are, people who didn't know who it was or that his parents were inside with them. They'll go, why are you sitting with them? Why aren't you inside? I'm like, because, and I would say, because the reason why we're here on Sunday, why I'm sitting up, being inside doesn't make me the better. Being out here with this kid makes me the better. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what the message is to be doing this. Not just being in there and showing up and singing the songs and repeating what needs to be repeated and then leaving and feel good about I felt better about myself sitting out there with that kid and talking about how he is loved.
Melanie, thank you so much. I mean, the fact that you went through all that and you came out the other side with an enhanced, deep empathy for other people and such a huge heart. I think your mom would be so proud of you and the woman that you are. I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story and talking about your mom, letting us hear everything that you wanted to talk about. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Wow.
My friend Raquel's got tears in her eyes again.
I do. I can't help it.
I know.
I mean, I'm just so many people, and Melanie said it herself. She could have gone in a completely different direction after the death of her mom. But she didn't. She channeled all that into other people. That is so amazing. And, and we've talked about that on the show before. When you talk about things, when you get those things out into the light,
sets you free.
It sets you free and it helps other people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who knows who's going to hear this and then feel like I'm not in this by myself.
Or I'm not the only one who had to live through something like this.
Exactly. Or if somebody's going through it now, I'll get to the other side.
Huge mess.
My family will be okay.
Huge
I'll be okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the other message, Raquel, get your boobies checked.
Check your boobies.
Get your boobies.
Save the tatas.
Save the tatas. And I'll use a better
Get
word.
universal health care.
That's what I was gonna say, but
I'm not gonna do it because there's a child in the room.
Exactly, but you say it so much better than I do. But screw you people who don't think we should have universal health care, because we all
need it. We all, even people who think, oh, I've got enough money, it won't wipe me out.
Goodbye. See you next time.
Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.